Britain has been invaded by beetles. That's right, beetles, with a capital B. The Beatles are four young performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a fortune. With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these four youngsters, backed by some astute promoters, have started fads in clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country. Britain has been invaded by beetles. That's right, beetles, with a capital B. The Beatles are four young performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a fortune. With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these four youngsters, backed by some astute promoters, have started fads in clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country. Britain has been invaded by beetles. That's right, beetles with a capital B. The Beatles are four young performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a fortune. With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these four youngsters, backed by some astute promoters, have started fads in clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country. Britain has been invaded by beetles. Yes, that's right, beetles, with a capital B. The Beatles are four young performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a fortune. With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these four youngsters, backed by some astute promoters, have started fads in clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country. Britain has been invaded by beetles. That's right, beetles, with a capital B. The Beatles are four young performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a fortune. With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these four youngsters, backed by some astute promoters, have started fads in clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country. Britain has been invaded by beetles. That's right, beetles, with a capital B. The Beatles are four young performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a fortune. With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these four youngsters, backed by some astute promoters, have started fads in clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country. Britain has been invaded by beetles. That's right, beetles with a capital B. The Beatles are four young performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a fortune. With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these four youngsters, backed by some astute promoters, have started fads in clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country. Britain has been invaded by beetles. Yes, that's right, beetles, with a capital B. The Beatles are four young performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a fortune. With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these four youngsters, backed by some
This is the clearest film ever shot of a real unidentified
grooming,
flying
and
object.
music that have swept the country.
68,000 UFO reports have been filed in this country alone.
Has been invaded by
Skeptics,
beetles.
however, pose an
That's
important
right,
question.
beetles with a
If
capital
flying
B.
saucers are so
the
common,
Beatles are four
why
young
haven't we
performers
captured one?
from Liverpool who are
In remote
parlaying
New
their
Mexico
near
desert,
unintelligible
researchers have discovered a
Liverpudlian
startling
accents
answer
into
to
a
that
fortune.
question.
With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these four youngsters, backed by some astute promoters, have started fads in clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country.
A persistent rumor holds that the United States government has
Britain
recovered
has been
and is
invaded by
concealing
beetles.
fragments
That's
of alien
right,
spacecraft.
Beetles, with a capital B.
Fragments
The Beatles
and more.
are 4 young performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a fortune. With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these 4 youngsters, backed by some astute companies, have started fads in clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country. Britain has been invaded by beetles. That's right, beetles.
This
with a
series
capital
presents
B.
information based
The
in
Beatles
part
are
on
4
theory and
young
conjecture.
performers from
The
Liverpool
producer's
who are
purpose is to
parlaying
suggest
their
some
near
possible
unintelligible
explanations, but not
Liverpudlian
necessarily the
accents
only
into a
ones
fortune.
to the mysteries we will
With
examine.
identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms.
Charges of a
These 4
UFO cover-up
youngsters,
began
backed by
almost
some
with the first
astute
famous flying
promoters,
saucer
have started
sightings in late
fads
June
in clothing,
1947.
grooming, and music
It's
that
curious.
have swept
These
the country.
reports seem to center around areas where atom bombs and rockets were
Britain
tested.
has been invaded
Were
by
alien
beetles.
forces keeping watch on the
That's
new
right,
weapons we
Beatles with
savages
a
had
capital
invented?
B. The Beatles are 4 young performers from
The flying
Liverpool
disc
who are
became the
parlaying
Pentagon's
their near
nightmare.
unintelligible
Seemingly,
Liverpudlian
our
accents
fastest jets
into a
could never
fortune.
come close to their
With
incredible
identical
speeds
hairdos that
and
make them look
right-angle
like
turns.
shaggy mushrooms.
UFOs were
These
said to be
4
able to shut down
youngsters,
guided
backed by
missiles
some
by
astute
remote control.
promoters, have started fads
The Air Force
in clothing,
organized Project
grooming,
Blue
and
Book
music
to officially
that have
investigate
swept the
UFOs.
country.
Since its termination in 1969, Blue Book
Britain
has been
has
alternately
invaded
praised
by
and
beetles.
damned.
That's right, beetles.
Well,
with
the
a
Air Force
capital
position
B.
is that we
The
investigated
Beatles are
UFOs
4
for
young
22
performers
years.
from Liverpool
Over
who are
12,000
parlaying their
sightings.
near
Colonel Don
unintelligible
Burgrave,
Liverpudlian
U.S. Air Force.
accents into a
About
fortune.
95% of
With
all the
identical
UFOs
hairdos
were
that make them look
explainable.
like
They were
shaggy
weather
mushrooms.
phenomenon, they were
These 4
balloons, they were
youngsters,
airplanes,
backed
they were
by some
lightning.
astute
And
promoters,
we
have
concluded
started
as a result
fads
of our
in clothing,
investigation, which was carried out
grooming,
very
and
scientifically,
music that have
that
swept
one,
the country.
there was no threat to the security of the United States, and there was
Britain
no evidence
has
that we
been
could ever
invaded by
locate
beetles.
that an
That's right,
extraterrestrial
beetles
vehicle
with a
had
capital
landed
B.
here.
The
New York
Beatles
lawyer
are 4
Peter
young
Gersten
performers
sued
from
the CIA
Liverpool who
and
are
FBI
parlaying their
to
near
release 5,000
unintelligible
UFO-related
Liverpudlian accents
documents.
into a fortune.
The reading of all the
With
documents
identical
reveals that
hairdos that
UFOs
make
have
them
the
look
ability
like shaggy
to render
mushrooms.
inoperable
These 4
present-day technology.
youngsters, backed by
UFOs
some
have the
astute
ability
promoters, have
to
started
gain
fads
access
in clothing,
to our most
grooming, and
sensitive
music
military
that have swept the
installations,
country.
unrestricted and unlimited access to
Britain
nuclear
has been
installations.
invaded by
There's
beetles.
no doubt about it in my
That's
mind
right,
that there's a government
beetles
UFO
with a
cover-up.
capital
Ray
B.
Fowler,
The
civilian
Beatles
UFO
are 4
researcher
young
for
performers
17
from
years.
Liverpool
I've talked to
who are
military people
parlaying
who
their near
have told me about
unintelligible
government cover-ups, how
Liverpudlian
they've been instructed
accents
to
into
say
a
this and to say
fortune.
that.
With
And
identical
I
hairdos
work
that
for
make
the
them look
United
like
States Air Force
shaggy
Security Service
mushrooms.
myself,
These
and
4 youngsters,
which work
backed
for the
by
National
some
Security
astute
Agency, and I'm very
promoters,
familiar with
have
intelligence
started
operations
fads
and
in
cover stories
clothing,
and things like
grooming,
that.
and
So there's no
music
doubt
that
in
have
my mind
swept
that
the
there is a
country.
cover-up.
If there was a planned cover-up,
Britain
then
has been
they
invaded
were
by
very
beetles.
successful in keeping it from me.
That's right.
Colonel
Beetles
Robert
with a
Friend,
capital
former head
B.
of Project Blue Book,
The Beatles
now
are 4
an
young
engineer on the
performers
space
from
shuttle.
Liverpool who are
A lot
parlaying
of
their
these
near
organizations,
unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a
decided
fortune.
that there was a cover-up
With identical
because
hairdos that
the
make
Air
them look
Force
like
didn't
shaggy
pursue
mushrooms,
these
4
sightings
youngsters,
to
backed
what
by
they
some
considered,
astute promoters,
the ultimate
have started
conclusion.
fads in clothing,
If there has
grooming,
been a
and
UFO
music
cover-up,
that have
it began
swept
in
the
Roswell,
country.
New Mexico. Near White Sands and Alamogordo,
Britain
Roswell was
has
home
been
base for
invaded
many
by
early
beetles.
tests of atom bombs
That's right,
and guided
beetles
missiles.
with a
Here
capital B.
also, the practice
Beatles are
of
4
military
young performers
stonewalling
from
may have been
Liverpool who are
perpetrated.
parlaying their
The
near
case began when
unintelligible
Roswell
Liverpudlian
businessman Dan
accents
Wilmot
into a
witnessed
fortune.
an amazing
With
object over the
identical
town.
hairdos
His
that
son
make them
tells
look like
the story.
shaggy
Their
mushrooms.
home in
These
July
4
of
youngsters,
1947,
backed
and
by
one
some astute
summer evening they were
promoters,
sitting out
have
here.
started fads
Dad
in
looked up in
clothing,
the
grooming,
west
and
and saw an
music
object
that
that
have
came
swept
down
the
and
country.
had lights blinking, and it was rather
Britain
frightening
has
to
been
him, but
invaded
instead all
by
of a sudden it
beetles.
seemed
That's
to
right,
rock a little bit and
beetles
sort
with
of
a capital
counterbalance
B.
itself,
The
wiggle a
Beatles
little
are
bit,
4 young
then seemed
performers
to
from
settle
Liverpool
down,
who are
take
parlaying
off
their
at
near
rapid rate of speed.
unintelligible Liverpudlian
The next day,
accents into a
reporters
fortune.
heard that the Air
With
Force had
identical
found fragments
hairdos
of the
that
mystery
make them look
object
like shaggy
crashed on a
mushrooms.
remote
These
ranch
4
northwest of
youngsters,
Roswell.
backed by some
Excitement
astute
ran high.
promoters, have
until
started
officials
fads
announced
in
it
clothing,
was only a
grooming,
weather
and
balloon.
music that have
Major
swept
Jesse
the country.
Marcel, in charge of the operation, now tells a far
has been
different
invaded
story.
by Beatles. That's right.
They took pictures,
Beatles
of course.
with
They had
a
a
capital B.
whole flock of
The
microphones
Beatles are
there. They
four
wanted me
young
to-
performers from
they wanted some
Liverpool who are
comments from me, but
parlaying their near
I wasn't at liberty to do
unintelligible
that.
Liverpudlian accents
So all I could
into
do
a
is keep
fortune.
my mouth shut.
With identical
And
hairdos
General
that make
Ramey
them
is the
look
one
like
who
shaggy
discussed or
mushrooms.
told
These
the
four
newspapers,
youngsters, backed by some
the newsman,
astute promoters,
what it
have
was,
started
and to
fads
forget
in
about it.
clothing,
There was
grooming,
nothing more
and
than a
music
weather
that have
observation
swept
balloon.
the country.
Of course, which we both knew differently.
Major
Britain
Marcel
has been
had to keep
invaded by
silent because of
Beatles.
his strategic
Yes,
position
that's
at
right,
that time.
Beatles with a
He was in charge of
capital
all
B.
security and
The Beatles
intelligence
are
on
four
atomic
young
tests
performers
in the
from
United
Liverpool
States
who are
and the
parlaying
Pacific.
their near unintelligible
Marcel
Liverpudlian
retraced his
accents
secret
into
recovery
a
operation across the
with
hot New
identical
Mexico
hairdos
desert.
that make them look like
We
shaggy
left
mushrooms.
Roswell
These
perhaps
four
around
youngsters, backed
3:30
by
or
some
4 o'clock in the
astute
afternoon.
promoters, have started
can
fads
see
in clothing,
it's flat.
grooming, and
It is
music
very
that
difficult. In
have
fact,
swept the country.
Just verbal directions, we never would have found it. We had to follow the
Britain
rancher out there.
has been invaded by Beatles.
The crash site
That's
was
right,
so remote,
Beatles,
it
with a
took an entire
capital
day
B.
to drive
The
there.
Beatles are four young performers from Liverpool
morning we
who
went
are
out to
parlaying
the
their
site where
near
the crash was.
unintelligible
And what I
Liverpudlian
saw, I couldn't
accents
believe
into a
there was so
fortune.
much of it.
With
It is
identical
scattered over such a vast
hairdos that
area.
make them look like
So
shaggy
we proceeded to
mushrooms.
pick up as
These
much of the
four youngsters,
debris as we
backed by
could,
some
loaded in a
astute
wagon.
promoters, have started
filled that up.
fads in
Took us a good part of the
clothing,
day to do that.
grooming, and music
Because,
that have
there's
swept
such
the
small
country.
fragments that we had to do a lot of picking. We found a
Britain
piece of
has
metal
been invaded by Beatles. That's right,
about
Beatles.
about a foot
with
and a half to
capital
2 feet
B.
wide and about
The Beatles are
about 2 or 3
four
feet
young
long.
performers from
Felt like you had
Liverpool
nothing in
who
your
are
hands. It
parlaying
wasn't
their
any thicker
near
than the
unintelligible
foil out of a stack of
Liverpudlian
cigarettes.
accents into a
But
fortune.
the thing about
With
that
identical
got
hairdos
me
that
is
make them look
you
like
couldn't even
shaggy
bend it,
mushrooms.
you couldn't bend
These
at it.
four
Even though the
youngsters,
sledgehammer
backed
would
by
bounce
some
off it.
astute promoters,
So,
have started
I knew that I
fads
had
in
never seen anything
clothing,
like that before.
grooming, and
And as of
music
as
that
of
have
now, I don't
swept
know
the
what it
country.
was.
There is new evidence that the
Britain
FBI
has
then
been
got into the
invaded
case
by
with a
Beatles.
different cover
That's right,
story.
Beatles with a
Lawyer
capital
Peter
B.
Gersten, searching
The
through
Beatles are four
declassified
young
government
performers
documents,
from Liverpool
came across
who
a
are
mention
parlaying
of the
their
Roswell
near
case.
unintelligible
One of those
Liverpudlian
documents related
accents
to an
into a
incident
fortune.
in Roswell, New
With
Mexico,
identical hairdos
which indicated
that
that
make
the
them look
object,
like shaggy
which had
mushrooms.
crashed,
These
was an
four
experimental
youngsters,
kite.
backed by some astute
The FBI
promoters,
investigated the
have
incident
started
and
fads in
determined that it
clothing,
was
grooming,
terrestrial.
and music
It
that
was
have
from
swept
an
the country.
organization which had been doing research in experimental
Britain
kites.
has been invaded by
What
Beatles.
did crash in this
Yes,
desert?
That's right.
A UFO?
Beatles with
A weather
capital
balloon?
B.
A radar
The
reflecting
Beatles
kite?
are four young
It was not
performers
anything
from Liverpool
from this
who are
earth that
parlaying
I'm
their
quite sure
near
of.
unintelligible
Because I was being an
Liverpudlian
intelligence officer, I was
accents
familiar with
into
just
a
about all
fortune.
materials used
With identical
aircraft
hairdos that make them
and
look
our
like
air travel.
shaggy mushrooms.
This is
These
nothing like
four
that. It could
youngsters,
not
backed
be.
by some
It could not have
astute
been.
promoters, have started fads in clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country.
To develop the first atomic bomb, the Manhattan Project was our first totally
Britain
secret military
has been
operation.
invaded by
Secrecy
Beatles.
has continued
That's
to
right,
this day
Beatles,
as an
with a
instrument of
capital
foreign
B.
policy.
The Beatles are four
Official
young performers
fabrications
from
have become a
Liverpool
vital
who are
link in
parlaying
security.
their near
We never admitted
unintelligible
such a spy
Liverpudlian
plane as our
accents
U-2
into a
existed,
fortune.
until the
With
Russians
identical
managed to
hair
shoot one from
that
their
make them look
skies.
like shaggy mushrooms. These
We managed
four
to capture
youngsters,
an
backed
advanced
by
enemy
some
aircraft.
astute promoters,
Even
have
fragments can
started
reveal
fads
new
in
information.
clothing, grooming, and music
Such
that have
captured
swept the
material is
country.
routinely rushed to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton,
Britain
to the
has
top
been
secret
invaded
foreign
by
technology
Beatles.
division.
That's right, Beatles.
This
with a
place is so
capital B.
classified
The
that
Beatles
former
are
Air
four
Force
young
General
performers from
Senator Barry
Liverpool who are
Goldwater
parlaying
was once
their near
denied entrance.
unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a fortune. With identical hairdos that make them look like
30
shaggy
years,
mushrooms.
rumors have spread
These
about
four
Wright-Patterson Air Force
youngsters,
Base.
backed by some
According to the
astute
stories, the
promoters,
U.S. government is
have
concealing
started
under
fads
top
in
security
clothing,
flying
grooming,
saucers
and
from
music
another
that
world
have swept
and
the
alien
country.
bodies
cryogenically suspended in huge freezers.
Britain has been invaded
Such rumors
by
could
Beatles.
be easily
That's
dismissed,
right, Beatles,
except
with a
that
capital
UFO
B.
researchers
The
have gathered
Beatles are four young
information
performers
leaked from
from
military
Liverpool
sources.
who are parlaying
Sources
their
who
near
claim to have seen
unintelligible
the craft
Liverpudlian
and the
accents
bodies.
into a fortune.
The stories
With
and
identical
rumors all
hairdos
mention a
that make them
mysterious
look like
Hangar
shaggy
18
mushrooms.
as the ultimate
These four
repository.
youngsters, backed by some
In search of
astute
cameras, were the
promoters,
first
have
allowed to
started
photograph
fads in
inside
clothing,
this hangar.
grooming, and
Is it
music
possible
that have
that
swept
here
the
in
country.
Hangar 18, highly secret activities once took place?
Britain has been
What
invaded
evidence of a
by
cover-up
Beatles.
might we hope to
That's
find?
right, Beatles, with a capital B. The Beatles are four performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian
Wright Patterson
accents
is one of the
into a
largest and
fortune.
most complex
With
air bases
identical
in the world.
hairdos that make them look like
In the Foreign
shaggy
Technology
mushrooms,
Division alone,
these four
hundreds of
youngsters,
secret
backed by
experiments have
some
been
astute
undertaken.
promoters, have
Continuing
started
military
fads
security
in
has
clothing,
made Hangar
grooming,
18
and
a
music
mysterious
that have
citadel.
swept the country.
Some experts believe that new designs have been created here. Every
Britain
branch of the
has
military
been
has
invaded
experimented
by
with
Beatles.
flying wedges,
That's right, Beatles,
flying wings,
with a capital B.
hovercraft,
The Beatles
with an
are
amazingly
four young
consistent
performers
lack of
from
results.
Liverpool who are parlaying their near
The flying saucer
unintelligible
shape was an
Liverpudlian
obsession of
accents
aeronautical
into a
pioneer
fortune.
Edmund Doak.
With
These
identical
rare
hairdos
films show
that make them
static
look
and
like
dynamic
shaggy
tests of
mushrooms,
his early
these
models.
four youngsters,
Doak
backed by
spent 30
some
years
astute
and $250,000
promoters, have started
investigating
fads
the
in
problems of
clothing,
circular
grooming,
airfoils.
and music that have swept the country.
Ironically, just when he seemed on the verge of a
Britain
breakthrough
has been
with
invaded
Doak's
by Beatles.
16
That's
vertical
right,
takeoff
Beatles,
plane,
with a capital
the Air
B.
Force canceled
The
development
Beatles
on
are
his
four young
projects.
performers from
No
Liverpool
reason
who
was
are
ever given.
parlaying their near unintelligible
NASA tested the
Liverpudlian
H-2F2
accents into a
lifting body
fortune.
as a
With
prototype of the
identical
space shuttle.
hairdos that make them
As
look
with
like
all
shaggy
flying wedges,
mushrooms,
lack of
these four
stability was the
youngsters,
single
backed by
unsolvable
some
problem.
astute promoters, have started fads in clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country. Britain has been invaded by Beatles. That's right, Beatles with a capital B.
We are unable to confirm
The
a
Beatles
single
are four young
successful test
performers
of a
from
man
Liverpool
flying
who are
saucer.
parlaying their
Yet,
near
the effort
unintelligible
continues.
Liverpudlian
Why?
accents
Does the
into
government
a
have some
fortune.
reason to pursue
With
this
identical
quest? A
hairdos
reason they're
that make
keeping
them look
secret?
like shaggy mushrooms.
From
These
Wenham,
four
a suburb of
youngsters,
Boston,
backed by some
comes an eyewitness
astute
account which
promoters,
could
have
explain this
started
continued
fads in
military
clothing,
fascination
grooming, and
with flying
music
saucers.
that have swept the
Ray
country.
Fowler, one of the most respected civilian UFO investigators,
Britain has been
is also
invaded by
author of 2
Beatles.
bestsellers in the
Yes,
field.
That's right, Beatles.
Because of his
with a
stint in the Air
capital
Force
B.
Security Service,
The Beatles are
he
four
finds
young
himself still
performers
vulnerable
from
to
Liverpool
government
who are
pressure.
parlaying
I
their
work for a
near
company that,
unintelligible Liverpudlian
designed and built
accents
a major
into a
weapon system.
fortune. With
And
identical hairdos
because
that make them look
of
like
connections
shaggy
within the company,
mushrooms,
because of
these
connections
four
with Dr. Jalen
youngsters,
Hynek,
backed
who
by
was an
some
Air Force
astute
investigator
promoters,
for many
have
years,
started fads
I
in
came across
clothing,
information that
grooming,
indicated
and music
that this major
that
weapon
have
system,
swept the
as well as
country.
others, had been disrupted by UFOs. And I gave a
has been
story to a
invaded
national
by
newspaper,
Beatles.
the Christian
That's
Science
right,
Monitor,
Beatles with a
which published the
capital
story.
B. The
Within
Beatles
an
are
hour
four
after
young
this particular
performers
paper
from
was out, the
Liverpool
Strategic
who are
Air Command
parlaying
called
their
my
near
company. And the
unintelligible
following day, the Pentagon
Liverpudlian
called the
accents
company and
into a
threatened to send a
fortune.
letter of displeasure
With
to the company
identical hairdos
if
that make
something
them look
wasn't
like
done about
shaggy
my
mushrooms, these
making
four
these
youngsters,
things public.
backed by some astute
Because of
promoters,
similar
have
pressures
started
in his own
fads
work,
in
a
clothing,
friend of Ray's had kept
grooming,
quiet
and
for
music
27
that have
years
swept
with
the
an amazing
country.
story. Ray tried to convince the friend to tell his
Britain
story on
has been
In Search
invaded
of.
by
It's been
Beatles.
several days now, and
That's
I've been
right,
waiting for you to call
Beatles
me on
with a
this, but
capital
have you
B.
come to any
The
conclusions?
Beatles
The
are
man
four
finally
young
agreed
performers from
for the first
Liverpool
time
who are
to
parlaying
talk,
their near
but only under
unintelligible
strict
Liverpudlian
conditions.
accents into
I
a
can assure
fortune.
you that
With
your
identical
name will not be
hairdos
used.
that make them
They
look
made
like
up a
shaggy
name,
mushrooms.
Fritz,
These
to
four
protect the witness's
youngsters,
true
backed
identity.
by some astute
But I think the best
promoters,
place to do
have
it probably would
started
be my
fads in
planetarium away from the
clothing,
kids and the telephone
grooming,
and
and
things like that.
music that have swept the country.
Waiting for his friend to
Britain
arrive,
has been
Ray
invaded
nervously
by
fiddled with his
Beatles.
telescopes.
That's right, Beatles with a
He
capital
remembered his
B.
extensive
The
investigations
Beatles are
into the
four
man's
young
reliability
performers
as
from
a witness.
Liverpool who are
In the case
parlaying
of
their
Fritz, I
near
started in
unintelligible
1973 and all the way
Liverpudlian
back
accents
to the various
into a
companies he
fortune.
worked for,
With
right back to
identical
Wright Patterson Air
hairdos
Force
that make
Base,
them
talked
look
to people
like
he worked
shaggy
with, and they all gave him a very clean bill
These
of
four
health, a reputable
youngsters,
man,
backed by
honest
some
man, not the
astute
type that would
promoters, have
fabricate a
started
hoax
fads
and a
in
very
clothing,
efficient
grooming, and
engineer
music music
manager.
that have swept
As the man
the
arrived,
country.
Ray recalled the years his friend had wavered about breaking an
Britain
oath of
has been
secrecy.
invaded by
He
Beatles.
recalled their long arguments
That's
about
right,
a greater
Beatles,
public good.
with a capital
Would
B.
the years of
The
patient
Beatles
persuasion
are 4
at
young
last
performers
pay off?
from Liverpool who are
As I
parlaying
understand
their
it,
near
Fitz, you were
unintelligible
working for the United States
Liverpudlian
Air Force,
accents
The story
into a
began late
fortune.
one night in
With identical
1953
hairdos
at
that make
Frenchman's
them look
Flat,
like
Nevada.
shaggy mushrooms.
The man had been
These
working as a
4
consultant on
youngsters,
blast
backed by
effects
some
of atom
astute
bombs
promoters,
when he was
have
suddenly
started
ordered to
fads
report
in
for a new
clothing,
mission.
grooming,
What
and
happened after
music
that?
that have
We were
swept
put on
the country.
a bus, which the windows were all completely covered with curtains and, in
Britain
some cases,
has been
black
invaded
paper
by
taped to the
Beatles.
windows.
That's right,
And
Beatles.
we're driven for
with a
3 or 4
capital
hours.
B.
And we're not
the
sure
Beatles
just
are
where
4
we were
young
going.
performers from
Several
Liverpool
of us
who are
tried to
parlaying
guess
their
where we
near
might have been.
unintelligible
We
Liverpudlian
at that time
accents
came to the
into
conclusion
a
it was in the area of
fortune.
Kingman, Arizona.
With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms. These
After
4
getting off the bus,
youngsters,
as
backed by
recreated
some
here,
astute
the scientists were
promoters,
taken
have
to an
started
even more
fads
remote
in
location.
Clothing, grooming, and music that have swept the country.
They had no idea exactly where they were
Britain
or
has
what
been
they were about to
invaded by
see.
Beatles.
We were
That's right,
told that we
Beatles
had been
with a
selected
capital
for
B.
various
The Beatles
technical
are 4
specialties.
young performers from
And I was told that I
Liverpool
was
who
to
are
ask
parlaying
any
their
questions that had
near
to do with dynamic
unintelligible
loads and nothing more, that I
accents
wouldn't be
into a
getting the
fortune.
answers to any other question.
With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these 4 youngsters, backed by some astute promoters,
They looked like
have
2
started
saucers, I
fads
would call
in
it,
clothing,
one on top of the other,
grooming,
inverted,
and music
probably
that have
25 to
swept
30
the
feet in
country.
diameter.
In
Britain
terms of
has
something
been invaded
known,
by
what
Beatles.
kind of metal would it
That's
look
right.
like?
Well, it would look like
Beatles
a
with
brushed
capital
aluminum.
B. The Beatles
I'm sure it
are
probably
4
wasn't
young
that. I
performers
say
from
that
Liverpool
because
who are
I
parlaying
noticed
their
no
near
scratch marks.
unintelligible Liverpudlian
And anything that would
accents
penetrate into the
into a
sand
fortune.
20 inches
With
that way
identical
would certainly have
hairdos
some
that
scratch
make them
marks.
look like
No signs
shaggy
of buckling,
mushrooms.
fracture, or anything.
These
Not
4
that I could see.
youngsters, backed
I
by
accepted
some
it was probably
astute
some United
promoters,
States
have
government
started fads
vehicle,
in
highly
clothing,
classified
grooming,
vehicle.
and music
We
that
were
have
told that that's what
swept
it was.
the country.
Interestingly enough, one of the questions I needed to know is what the mass of the
Britain
vehicle
has
was.
been invaded
I could tell
by
a lot of
Beatles.
things from the penetration into the
That's
desert
right,
sand and so
Beatles
forth, but I needed
with
to
a
know the mass.
capital B.
And they told
The
me that
Beatles
they
are
weren't going to
4
let me
young
know that.
performers from
They perhaps
Liverpool
didn't even
who
know
are
themselves.
parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian
There was also a
accents
tent,
into a fortune.
which
With identical
I didn't get to
hairdos
look
that make
into,
them look
but
like shaggy
one fellow
mushrooms.
whom I did happen to talk
These
with
4
briefly until they told us
youngsters,
to stop
backed by
talking,
some astute promoters,
said that he had
have
seen 2
started
bodies
fads
inside
in
this
clothing,
tent, 2
grooming, and
alien-looking
music
bodies.
that have swept the
It was
country.
brown, leathery skin, had a silver, like a cap
Britain
on,
has been
without a bill.
invaded by
Like a skull
Beatles.
cap.
Yes,
That's
like a
right,
skull cap.
Beatles with a capital B. The Beatles are 4 young performers from Liverpool who are
I realized
parlaying their
what
near
this really started to mean,
unintelligible
but I
Liverpudlian
also at the same
accents
time
into
realized
a
probably
fortune.
why the
With
government was keeping it
identical
classified.
hairdos that make
There are
them
a
look
lot
like
of
shaggy
things that
mushrooms.
could
These
be
4
changed by our
youngsters,
culture
backed
or
by some
religion. There are a lot of
astute
things that could be
promoters,
affected
have
by
started fads
the release of
in
information
clothing,
like that at that
grooming,
particular
and
time.
music that have swept the country.
Like many other UFO stories,
Britain has
this
been
also
invaded
concludes
by
with the
Beatles.
recovered
That's
craft
right,
taken to
Beatles
Wright-Patterson
with a
Air
capital
Force
B.
Base.
The Beatles are 4
Cameras
young
are normally
performers from
prohibited there,
Liverpool who are
but in
parlaying
Zerchoff
their
was
near
allowed to photograph certain
unintelligible
declassified
Liverpudlian
areas.
accents into a fortune. With identical
We found there
hairdos
actually
that make them
are
look like
huge
shaggy
freezing
mushrooms.
chambers
These
inside the
4
legendary
youngsters,
Hangar
backed
18.
by some astute
The only knowledge I have
started
of
fads
little green
in
men,
clothing,
Martians, or whatever
grooming, and
would be
music that have
from the
swept
articles
the
I've
country.
read of some of the published
Britain
novels
has been
like Frank
invaded
Scully's
by
book
Beatles.
and things
That's
like
right,
that.
Don
Beatles
Ritter,
with a
buildings
capital B.
manager since
The Beatles are
1942,
4 young
claims the
performers
giant
from
freezing
Liverpool
cells were
who are
never used
parlaying
for
their
storage
near
of alien
unintelligible
bodies.
Building
Liverpudlian
18 at
accents into a
Wright-Patterson
fortune.
was used primarily
With identical hairdos
for
that
cold
make them look
soak
like
engine
shaggy
testing.
mushrooms.
And we had
These
4
4
cells in this
youngsters,
facility
backed by
that
some
we
astute
would
promoters,
take down
have
to minus
started
65
fads in
degrees
clothing,
Fahrenheit.
grooming, and music that have swept
Soak the engine
country.
for some period of time and make the engine
Britain
starts to
has
test
been
components,
invaded by
engines, and
Beatles.
whatever for
Yes,
cold starts.
That's right. Beatles
My major
with a
criticism is that
capital B.
way back in the
The Beatles are 4
1947s,
young
there should have been a
performers
gradual
from Liverpool who are
information
parlaying their
release
near
and
unintelligible
had the
Liverpudlian
public
accents
accustomed
into a
to
fortune.
what UFOs are,
With
what we're trying to do
identical
about them.
hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these
Instead,
4
they've
youngsters, investors,
covered up
backed
so
by
long
some
that to admit that
astute
they've covered it up,
promoters, have
it's almost
started
like another
fads
Watergate.
in clothing,
Plus the
grooming,
fact
and
that
music that
I think
have
they don't have the
swept
answers. And if they admitted even what they knew, people would want to know more
Britain
answers. They don't
has
have the
been
answers to give
invaded
them.
by
I'm sure they don't
Beatles.
have the answers to
That's
give them.
right,
Based
Beatles
on my own
with a
personal and
capital
professional
B.
experiences
The Beatles are
for the
four
last
young
26
performers
years
from
of wearing this
Liverpool
blue
who are
suit.
parlaying
And most
their
of that
near
I've been in the public affairs
unintelligible
business where
Liverpudlian
I'm
accents
responsible
into
for
a
releasing
fortune.
information to the public.
With
I
identical
can assure you on
hairdos
behalf
that
of the
make them
Air
look
Force
like
that
shaggy
there's
mushrooms,
just no truth to
these
that at
four
all.
youngsters
Inside
backed
the
by
freezing
some
chambers
astute
of Hangar
promoters
18,
have
we've
started
examined
fads
one
in
small clue
clothing,
in the mystery of the
grooming, and
UFO
music that
cover-up.
have swept the country.
Whether it proves fact or fiction, this search for flying saucers has already profoundly influenced our perception of our place in the universe.
Beatles are four young performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near
Colonel Robert
unintelligible
Friend,
Liverpudlian
former head of
accents
Project Blue
into
Book.
a fortune.
I
With
believe that
identical hairdos
speculation
that make
and a
them look like
scientific approach
shaggy
to it
mushrooms.
can't live
These
together.
four youngsters, backed by
I
some
would
promoters, have started fads in clothing,
feel that there were,
grooming, and music
in
that have
lots of
swept the
instances,
country.
cases that had potential scientific
Britain
pay
has
dirt
been
that
invaded
possibly
by
should have
Beatles.
been
That's
pursued
right,
further.
Beatles with a capital B.
In
The
that
Beatles
regard,
are four young
yes,
performers from Liverpool who are
I
parlaying
think
their
that
near
some of the
unintelligible
cases had a lot of
Liverpudlian
promise.
accents into
The
a
Roswell
fortune.
case and the
With
strange
identical
story of the
hairdos
man
that
known
make
as
them look
Fritz
like
are
shaggy
two
mushrooms.
dramatic examples
These
of
four
close
youngsters,
encounters of the
backed by
fourth
some
kind.
astute promoters,
Like the
have started
68,000
fads in
reports on
clothing,
record of
grooming,
UFO
and
sightings,
music that
they
have
exist
swept
in a
the
limbo,
country.
halfway between science and speculation.
Britain has been invaded by Beatles. Yes, that's right, Beatles. The Beatles are four young performers from Liverpool who are parlaying their near unintelligible Liverpudlian accents into a fortune. With identical hairdos that make them look like shaggy mushrooms, these four young